Hi, I'm Charlotte DeMolay. I'm an artist and instructor, and I have been for over 25 years. We use creativity in every aspect of our life, from the arts to the boardroom, mathematics, engineering, science, even in the day-to-day tasks we do around our homes and in our lives. Every part uses creativity. Elizabeth Gilbert, in her book Big Magic, says, if you're alive, you're a creative person. Sometimes our creative well feels empty. Everything seems routine or boring. Maybe we don't have ideas in the studio or at the computer, wherever you need it in your life. Sometimes I feel this way, but I have learned over the years ways to fill my creative well, to light that creative spark. Being creatively inspired is sometimes just changing your perspective and how you view things and how you view the world around you. In fact, my motto is, I don't see the world as it is, I see the possibilities. I'm always on the lookout for inspiration. Going outdoors is one of my favorite places to look for creative inspiration. This class, Creative Spark Outside, will show you some of the ways that I use the outdoors to light my creative spark. So please join me as I go outside looking for creative sparks. Before we head outside, let's talk a little bit about safety and being prepared for your outdoor adventure. First, watch the weather. Make sure it's a day you actually want to be outside. Tell someone where you're going and how long you expect to be there. Dress appropriately, not just for the weather, but for whatever activity you'll be doing, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of walking. And know your limits. If you haven't been out in the heat much or the cold, or if you haven't been doing a lot of physical activity, be aware of that and tailor your outside adventure to what you feel capable of doing. Decide some sort of method or even multiple methods of recording what you're doing. When I'm out in nature, I most frequently use my camera and record photos. Whether I'm using my phone or if I'm using my DSLR, it's my favorite way to record images to bring back into my studio later. Sometimes I do special trips just for sketching. You may want something to take notes with, like a notebook or a journal. If you're going out to be inspired for poetry or writing or songwriting or even music writing, you need something to record these things, whether you're recording what you say or writing it down. So think before you head out, how would you like to record the inspiration and the ideas that you get on your outings? When you get to the outdoor place you're going to explore, if there's a map, check that out. Take a look and see if there's side paths and trails that you haven't explored before. While you're out walking around, be sure to look all directions. Sometimes things are way up high or even down low out of your normal viewing area. Look for multiple inspirations. As you'll see later in the class, sometimes things will catch you totally off guard that you're not even expecting to see. Be sure to take time to stop for a little while and absorb everything. Engage all your senses when you're outside. The sounds of the site, even sounds that don't belong. And my favorite nature preserve, it's just off of a busy street. I can hear the sounds of cars and sirens and things occasionally, and it doesn't intrude. It makes me feel like I'm almost in a hidden garden. Take in the smells, especially in community areas. Even engaging your sense of taste, obviously if it's safe. Let's head outside and explore some nature. Nature has been a creative spark for me for the bulk of my artistic career. I love being outside. I love gardening, animals, hiking, walking, just anything being outside. The main creative spark for me has been the coast. Even when I lived in Texas for 20 years, the bulk of my inspiration was photos that I would take when I'd go back to North Carolina to visit family, and we'd inevitably always visit the beach. I would take hundreds and hundreds of reference photos. This was a lot easier after digital, and then bring them back to my studio in Texas. And it was the inspiration for the bulk of my artwork. 2 years ago, I was fortunate enough to move to Florida. I am on the Gulf Coast side, and I'm actually within walking distance to the beach. So I have easy access now to one of my favorite creative sparks. Nature can mean many things, though. For some, your creative spark may be the countryside or the mountains. My parents have a farm right at the edge of the foothills and the mountains of North Carolina. They've had this farm for over 30 years, and it's definitely been a creative inspiration for me. I'm in one of my favorite places to be outside and get creatively recharged. I love nature, and this is a little nature preserve in the middle of a town nearby. It only takes me about 10 minutes to get to. I come out here at least once a month to recharge my creative batteries and take a lot of photos. Usually I see my favorite out here, which is an American alligator, but I haven't seen any today. But my other obsession are birds here in Florida, and I've already taken quite a few pictures. The reason I love this park so much As you can see, as I'm panning around, there's a boardwalk that goes along the inside of the pond instead of out on the outer edge, which allows you to see some of the shore life and things right along the banks that you don't often see when you're walking around the outside of a lake or a pond. So I'm walking around the preserve. It's very peaceful. I was going to say quiet, and then I really listened and realized it's not that quiet. But these are the sounds that I love. I try and identify what kind of birds or what. And if I'm lucky, get a photograph of them. I've already seen some mamas and their babies today. And for some reason, the dragonflies have been particularly helpful in posing for me, so I can get some great shots of those. So I'm back at my favorite nature preserve. It's been rainy here and I needed a nature fix. And this time I was not disappointed. Let me show you who's down here in the water. He's a big guy. And I'm going to close our Nature Creative Spark with this little video of a mama manatee and her baby I took right off a dock close to my house. Next, let's explore our community. Getting outside in your community can mean a lot of different things. Outside doesn't always mean nature, although the bird over my shoulder that's screeching would disagree with that. I'm in a small little downtown area nearby my house. This has got a lot of cute little shops, and on the other end it actually has a farmer's market going on. Getting outside can mean exploring your local area, whether you're in a smaller area, small suburb area, or maybe you're in a big city. Maybe it means exploring where you live. Even though I've never lived in a big city, I've lived near them. I lived outside of Dallas for 20 years, and now I live near Tampa. Even when I travel, I love exploring cities. I love walking in the downtowns, seeing the shops, seeing the outdoor cafes. There's just an energy in cities. One of my favorite things to photograph or sketch in a city is the architecture. I visited Ottawa, Canada about 15 years ago, and I have this small mini sketchbook filled with quick sketches of the architecture, the buildings, the little cafes. The city was so different from where I lived at that time outside of Dallas, Texas. I found the whole city a creative inspiration. Maybe your city has an unusual point of interest. Artwork is always an interesting thing. Most cities have some sort of parks or sculpture. Don't discount the tourist sites. There's a reason that they're so appealing. And sometimes the tourists themselves at the tourist sites can be inspiration. I've done a lot of quick sketching of people and people watching. And on that note, cultural enclaves are fascinating. They have their own vibrancy and energy and colors and flavors, literal flavors, even the foods. Even if you're not an artist, you can find a lot of inspiration in your community. My son is a chef, and one of his favorite things to do when he's in a new town or downtown area or city is a lot of times restaurants will have their menus outside, paper menus that you can take a copy of, takeout menus, that type of thing. He likes to collect those and browse through those, one, to figure out where he'd like to eat, but two, it gives him ideas. Historic sites can be a source of creativity. For me, the gardens of historic sites are the most inspirational. Not necessarily artistically, but I often get many ideas for my own garden from historic gardens. Your city may have monumental sites like statues or architectural interest. The scale of monumental sites has always fascinated me. For a couple of years between Texas and Florida, I lived in Northern Virginia and was just outside of Washington, D.C. I made a point of going in every few months. It was not just the history of the architecture, but the monumental scale of it that fascinated me as well. Sometimes when you're exploring your community, the unexpected will inspire you. I liked this potted plant arrangement. And the roots of this tree I found particularly fascinating. You don't even have to leave your neighborhood to explore your community. For 17 years, we lived in a community right outside of Dallas in the suburbs. It was one of those planned developments that, it has a name, it had pools and hiking trails, that type of thing. I walked and ran in that neighborhood for 17 years and got a ton of inspiration out of it. I I've mentioned I love gardening, and I don't typically listen to music when I'm running or walking because I'm too busy looking. I pick out my favorite plants, trees. I look at the way people have put different arrangements together, different colors together. In fact, a lot of the things that I end up planting in my yard in that home, it was things that I found out on my walks that I enjoyed at different times of the seasons. There's some other ways to explore your community as well. During the lockdown of 2020, I was living in a townhome and my walking was kind of limited. It was the parking lot of the townhome complex in which my husband and I lived, the condo next door, and we were bound by some busy streets, so I couldn't get very far. And I was getting a little bored on my walks, so my husband went on a walk and devised essentially a scavenger hunt for me. And he took pictures of the things that he saw and he gave me clues. So as I went out, I was a little more recharged on my walk. I was looking for different things. And even though I found some things that weren't on his list, it made me look at my surroundings with fresh eyes. And I discovered some new things he hadn't seen. He saw things that I had never noticed before. It was a fresh way of looking at a space that I had gotten a little bit bored of. Now let's head back out into our community for some activity. So this section is about going outside where there's activity. I'm obviously not outside. I'm sitting in my studio. I tried to do some recordings while I was out and it was too noisy. So I thought I would do a quick intro here where you can hear me. While the street noise wasn't good for trying to record, what it does point out is not all of the creative sparks are visual. And this is what I was talking about with engaging all of your senses. And that's one of the things I love with street festivals and markets. It's the smells, it's the sounds, it's hearing people talk, it's talking with other people. A lot of times there's music playing, street performers, bands, all these types of things that really feed that creative spark. Although a lot of my outside explorations I do by myself, sometimes I like the energy of being around other people. My favorite place to find outside activity is through street markets and street festivals. I love all types, including art festivals, farmers markets, and just regular street festivals with music and vendors and shows. I'm a huge gardener, as I've mentioned a couple times, so I like going to garden shows, and even community gardens can be a great place of inspiration. One of the key reasons I find outdoor activity so inspiring is not just the places and the things I'm looking at, but it's the people I talk to. For example, exploring your local community garden. Not only is the garden fascinating, but talking to the gardeners and the people who have been involved in a project like that can lead to a lot of inspiration and ideas. This is a photo of my son exploring an art market in the Caribbean. So even when traveling, outdoor markets and activities can be inspiring. I know this isn't technically outside, but this was an indoor-outdoor market in Barcelona. Even though I probably can't identify most of the things in this photo, I love the colors and the patterns, just the vibrancy of this. This was in Portugal, Spain. My husband took this photo. I think he actually bought me a souvenir from this stand. Look at the interesting overlay of texture and patterns in this photo. Every time I go to a garden show, I get inspired to try terrariums again. I had some in Texas, but I've moved a few many times to drag them with me. And sometimes you get inspired by things that aren't part of the activity. I was at a street festival in a community called Gulfport, and I noticed these colorful rocks around a garden bed. What a neat way to add pops of color in your outdoor space. And look at this flip-flop tree. How cool is that? Now let's move into more intimate outdoor spaces, your private space. Outdoor spaces don't have to be far from where you live. In fact, my favorite outdoor space is my own yard. I have a nice little screened-in porch, and it is my favorite place to sit with my coffee or to do writing. I'll work on art projects out here. I have container gardens out here, and even in my yard, I have some tropical plants like hibiscus flowers, which have been a source of inspiration lately for my paintings. You might not necessarily feel inspired by your private space, but maybe you feel inspired in your private space. For example, my porch is my favorite place to write. I don't know if it's because it's away from all my to-dos inside, but I find the words flow a lot better when I'm sitting outside on my porch. I'm recording this in 2021, and of course we all experienced the coronavirus lockdowns of 2020, and many people realized that their own private outdoor space was a huge source of comfort for them during this time. If you haven't really explored your own private outdoor space, take a look and see what you can do to make it an inspirational space for you and to help fuel your own creative sparks. So thank you for doing Creative Spark Outside with me. I hope you got a lot of ideas and you're encouraged and fired up to get outside yourself. And I hope that you will join me for more creative sparks in the future. Thank you.